I'm sitting at home with my cat. The cat turns and looks behind me at the front door. I feel a cold draft against the back of my neck. I look and I can see the shape walking, moving through my lounge, going into my kitchen. And I could see it was a little old lady. She looked in my oven.
Well, hello there. I'm Cool Gray, and this is Cool Gray in Studio A. Welcome back. We are in season 2. We are in the second part of the second series called Paranormal Encounters. I'm so excited about today's conversation. It's the second in this series, and there are 4 more coming up. Today's is going to be quite a wild ride, so buckle your seatbelts. I have a little bit of business to take care of before we get started, but I'm going to jump into it just as quickly as I can because it's quite a conversation. First of all, I just want to let you know that I have been doing a little bit of reflecting over the holiday season, and there'll be a couple of little changes around here. Don't get excited. It's nothing that's going to throw you or ruin your day. In fact, I hope it's going to enhance your day. First thing you're going to notice is that beginning with this episode, you will not hear the 2-minute ads that I've been doing for my Patreon any longer. I've decided to suspend the Patreon account for 2023. And what that means is that I have made the full video versions of each one of these episodes, which used to be exclusive to the Patreon supporters. Those are now available for free on my YouTube channel, where there are actually 2 other studios. There's a Studio B and a Studio C. So pop over there, subscribe, click the notification bell, stay informed, and now you can watch me and you can watch my guests if you prefer to experience your podcasts that way. If you're a listening type, then just stay right where you are on your favorite platform. Nothing's going to change over there. In addition, I will be creating exclusive content for both the YouTube channel and for the podcast, the listening platforms. So you'll want to subscribe and plug in both places because there are certain little minis that I'll be doing that are only going to be in video form on the YouTube channel and certain ones that are only going to be available in audio format on the listening platforms. So you'll want to be connected in as many ways as possible in order to have what I like to call the full immersion experience with Cool Gray in all of her studios, in all of her forms. I just can't seem to contain myself. Check those show notes, find and follow, plug in on Facebook, plug in on Instagram, plug in everywhere. While you're plugging, pop over to my website and find the listener survey. There's a link in the show notes that'll take you there directly. Fill out that little listener survey. It'll help me know how to continue to grow the podcast and fine-tune things. Progress, folks. It's about progress. If you do that and you are the 10th person to correctly complete that survey, there is a prize. I mentioned this in the last episode. What is that prize? Well, I have it right here. It is a cup phone holder. It's a $25 value. It fits right in the cup holder of your car, and your smartphone will plug into it. In addition to the prize, you will also receive, if you are the lucky winner, you will receive a personal handwritten thank you note from moi. How can you possibly pass that up? Needless to say, this is not going to take you long. 5 minutes tops. Do you have something better to do? I think not. Having taken care of all of that business, I am going to just stop talking right now to you and start talking to my guest. Let's get right to that interview, and I will see you on the other side. I'd like to introduce my guest today. Jayc Ryder lives a diverse and active life with many irons in the fire. He's worked as an author in corporate sales and marketing and training and coaching. He's also been a dancer, a television host, and a public speaker. But perhaps most interesting, and the reason I invited Jayc to be my guest today, is he is a psychic medium. Since he was very young, Jayc has had paranormal experiences that others initially dismissed as a vibrant imagination. But as he got older, he went looking for answers as he sought to balance these experiences with a normal life. Recently, he was invited to represent the many psychics and mediums in Australia on a reality TV show filmed in Ukraine, where after 6 months of extensive testing by skeptics, he was voted 3rd best psychic medium in the world. And that is quite a statement. Jayc, welcome to the podcast. I'm super glad you're here. I'm very excited about this conversation.
Hi, Lynn. Thanks. It's lovely to be here.
Now, I know that for you, this ability became evident to you at a very, very young age. Will you tell me a little bit about that first experience?
Yeah, my first experience also ties in very strongly with your intro.
Mhm.
I grew up in New Zealand, beautiful country. I spent a lot of the time on the farm. All school holidays, I would go to the farm to visit my cousins. And I had one cousin. His name was Ryan. Unfortunately, he was the same age, and that's not unfortunate, but what was unfortunate was that he was born with a hole in his heart.
Oh, dear.
And back then, medical technology only gave him 5 years to live. He lasted till he was 10. And that's wonderful, but I had 10 amazing years with him as my best friend. He's my cousin, my best friend. I would go to the farm. We would do all sorts of crazy stuff on the farm. Oh my goodness, there's stories there. That's for another time.
I'll do another series called, Crazy Kid Stuff, and I'll invite you
Yeah,
back.
crazy kids on the farm, tree huts, digging dams, just changing the shape of the farm. And at his funeral, now it was a country town, so we had everybody in the town there. I remember the cemetery was right next to the community hall. I was standing at the gravesite. Sorry,
It's emotional still.
it's emotional. His coffin was being lowered, and that was my first death in the family.
Mm-hmm.
So it was my first experience of death. And I remember I had a rose, and Mum told me to put it on his coffin as it was being lowered. And I remember looking in the hole, dropping the rose on the coffin as it was being lowered. Well, that was it. Tears came.
Sure.
I ran into the community hall. Now, you know how when you've got a community, everyone brings food.
Of course, you need a casserole for this.
Okay, we have huge amounts of food. So we've got all the catering tables out in the hall, and they've all got those big white skirts around them hiding the legs.
Right.
I went under one of those tables and I just sat there crying. And this is one of those never forget moments. I open my eyes and he's sitting next to me.
Wow.
And I'm looking at him. He's a bit see-through. He's just wearing normal clothes, what I would normally see him wearing. And that was my reaction.
Of course.
He said to me, "You have some abilities that people will not understand for a long time, but do it anyway." And he disappeared.
Is this a voice that you heard audibly, or was this more of a telepathic?
Audibly, and I saw his lips moving, and I saw him. As I can see you now, but just imagine you were see-through.
Did you feel that you could touch him if you wanted to?
I didn't actually get to that thought. It was more, I was in shock, and
of course,
I was frozen to the spot. This was a deeply emotional moment. It was, I didn't understand, because just as a side note, we weren't a church-going family. We didn't believe in God. We didn't believe in churches. The only reason you went to church was for 3 reasons: hatch, match, and dispatch. Birth, marriage, and death.
Yeah.
And so now I've just seen a ghost. And so I ran out from the table, ran out to my mum, and I went, Mum, I just saw Ryan under the table. And she said, "Yes, of course you did, dear. He's in your heart." And I was, what's that supposed to mean? So from that moment onwards, I just ignored what I could see.
And what could you see?
I tried to be normal. Well, I could see energy around people. I could see people's auras. I could see angels or ghosts or whatever you want to call them next to them, because people, you know how we all say, "Oh, so-and-so's got a guardian angel," or "Grandpa's looking over you."
Right.
I would see these things.
Is that something that started after you saw your cousin, or was that already happening at that moment?
Well, if it was happening before, I would put it down as my imagination.
So you were connecting those moments, those experiences, to what he said after you heard those words.
After those words, it was Oh, so my imaginary friends, maybe they could be real, but I had no one to talk to. I had
Hmm.
no one who wanted to understand. My parents didn't want to know.
Yeah.
It was a real turning point for me because all of a sudden I had all these questions and I couldn't find answers.
Right. Was this a daily experience for you? Is just integrated into your moment to moment life?
Daily, hourly, it was just, I'd look and I'd see different things. And at first, I also thought it was my eyesight. And yes, I had to have glasses and my eyesight was tested. But even then, with glasses, I'm still having these different images and views. It made having my eye tests very difficult.
I imagine so. What was the culture in New Zealand at the time with regard to embracing any kind of psychic phenomena? Was it something that was there a large interest in the culture? Was it roundly rejected?
It was rejected. The closest you got was the Maori culture, where they call upon the great spirits.
Hmm.
And so that was the only cultural area in the country. And if you weren't Maori, you couldn't call on the great spirits.
So there was no community for you to plug into, no counterculture for you to tap into.
I was on my own until about 20, and I discovered a witch.
Hmm.
She had a shop
Okay.
with all sorts of witchy paraphernalia. And she had all these potions and lotions and powders and things for spells. And she had tarot cards and she had, um, oh, I'm going to tell you that story now.
I'd like to hear that story.
I, I would go every Saturday to her shop. I would spend hours. I'd sit on the floor reading the books. It got to a point where she would have to go out to get something and she'd hand me the shop keys and the till keys for her.
She did everything but put you on payroll.
Basically, yeah. But I got my first set of tarot cards from there and I started learning how to read tarot because I was looking for an answer. I was looking, how do I deal with this crazy stuff? I'm seeing stuff. Should I be locked up? Should I go and get psychiatric help and a nice jacket that does up around the back in a padded room? I actually thought at one point I must be crazy.
So, up until this point, it sounds like you weren't using this ability in any kind of constructive way. You weren't reading people or.
I was reading people, but I didn't understand what I was doing. I
Mhm.
wasn't doing it as a business. I wasn't doing it to help people. I would just be me. And it confused people because I'd know things that I shouldn't know. And that was the fun part, was being able to tell people things and they were, how do you know this?
Mhm.
And I started developing myself. But I spent 3 months reading tarot cards and learning about tarot. And then one day I was at home, it was the Sunday night, I heard, call Zada. She was my best friend's ex-girlfriend. I had to call her. Now, I'd never been to her home. And at this time, she'd had a child. Yeah, she was living in an apartment. And I rang her and I said, hey, put the kettle on. I'm coming for a coffee. I have to read tarot cards for you. You're going to be my first. And she was cool. I arrive, I meet her son for the first time. I hadn't seen her in 5 years. I remember this big oak table, beautiful timber table in her kitchen. And I put the cards out and I'm looking at the cards and I don't want to say what I'm going to say. I said, I have to tell you, someone's going to die. And she said, oh, that's okay. It'll be Uncle Bill. He's had cancer. It's been in remission, but I know he's been sick. And I looked and I went, yeah, no, it's a woman. But I didn't say to her it was a woman because I was afraid that it was her. And I went, oh, okay. 9 weeks go by. It's a Sunday night again. I've made a roast dinner. I'm sitting at home, my cat. The cat turns and looks behind me at the front door. I feel a cold draft against the back of my neck. I look and I can see the shape walking, moving through my lounge, going into my kitchen. And I could see it was a little old lady. It was a grandma type person.
Mhm.
She looked in my oven. She looked in my oven.
She had to approve of your cooking technique. It's not that she was hungry.
I
She wanted to know
mean,
if you were being faithful to the old recipes.
she came out and I said, hello. because I'd been taught, I'd done a lot more reading by this time. And what I'd read was if you see a ghost, be polite, talk to them.
Mhm.
So I said, hi, do you have a message for me? And she said, yes, ring Zada. I went, is there anything else? And she said, no, not for now, but there will be later. Oh, okay, thank you, please leave. And out she went. I picked up the phone. Now, these were dial phones back in those days.
Mhm.
No caller ID. I dial Zada. She picks up the phone. Hi, Jayc. She knew it was me.
Mhm.
Before I said a word, and I said to her, why have I just had a ghost tell me to ring you? And she went, oh, bleep, 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 expletive word. You're seeing her too. And I went, I'm seeing who? And she says, that's right, you don't know. I don't know what. Now, at this point, my emotions are getting a bit on edge. I'm, oh, what's going on? And she said, look, 3 weeks after your reading, Mum was hanging the washing out at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and she dropped down dead. She had a heart attack, dead.
Oh, gosh.
We keep seeing her around the house. Now, at that point, my voice changed slightly. It took on a slight accent, a Maori accent, in fact. And I said, I'm not going to try and do the accent now. I said, stop fighting with your sister and sell the house. And she was, you just sounded like Mum then. And how do you know we've been fighting? And I said, please, I've just had a ghost visit me. Let's just pretend I know what I'm talking about. And she went, look, we would sell the house. We can't find the paperwork. I said, right, go to Mum's bedroom. The bed is sitting here against this wall here. There's a chest of drawers here with 5 drawers. There's another one over here with 4. Go to the one with 5, not the one with 4. Go 3 drawers down on the bottom right at the back, under the clothes. That's where the paperwork for the house is. And she went, okay, I'll call you back from Mum's place. I'll go there now. 20 minutes later, I get another phone call. Hi, I'm at Mum's. I'm in her bedroom. Oh, bleep, 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 expletive, expletive, expletive. There's the paperwork. It was exactly where I said it was. I'd never been to Mum's house. I'd certainly never been in her bedroom.
And if I'm following your story correctly, you haven't been doing this kind of thing regularly. So it must have come as a bit of a surprise to you as well.
Yeah, because what I just found out that day was not only could I knew I could see ghosts, but I could foretell death. I could see death happening.
And you had some clairvoyance as well. So you helped her find the papers. So here's confirmation, really, for the first time, it sounds like, where you're able to take everything happening inside of you and attach it to something happening in the world.
And I got clarification in such a strong way. I stopped doing everything for 3 months. I tried to be normal and I tried to block everything and go, I don't want to know about death.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't stop what happens. And so I had to continue.
Well, it sounds like as you're on your journey to figure out how to integrate these extraordinary experiences with what the rest of us will call normal life. I'm not a fan of that word, to be honest with you. I mean, who gets to say? But it sounds like you were comfortable exploring that in some ways publicly, having some fun with it. But at the same time, you're saying it was troublesome to be having information, particularly about death. So how many years did that go on before you had your opportunity to be on the reality TV show? It was quite a number of years you were operating this way.
Because, I mean, this is back in, this was back in the late 80s and early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
During that time, I'm learning more about how the mind works, how the body works, how to move energy around the body, how to counsel people. I did a full diploma in clinical hypnotherapy. I became a qualified hypnotherapist. I was then studying psychology.
Mm-hmm.
But I found that because of my belief systems and the things that were happening, the psychologists didn't really like me fitting into their box. So I wasn't accepted to enroll in
you weren't sciencey enough.
Yeah, because I was challenging everything
Yeah.
and I had different ways of,
Hmm.
anyway. So, but I learned a lot. And part of my studying of clinical hypnotherapy, it introduced me to past life regression,
Hmm.
which was cool because then I discovered about what reincarnation's all about. I remember we were doing a class on past life regression, and our tutor wanted to volunteer, and he picked the girl that was sitting next to me, just one of my friends in the class. There's 20 of us there. He starts doing an induction on her to take her back to a time and place where she has lived before. Note the language that I'm using, time and place where she has lived before.
Hmm.
Well, I close my eyes and I can see everything that she can see. Now, I'd been doing a couple of other techniques, quantum touch and Reiki as well. I was learning different breathing techniques so I could instantly put myself into a trance like state. Here she is. She was in this beautiful Victorian style dress. She's standing at the top of stairs on a balcony. Well, it wasn't really a balcony, it was the hallway, upper floor level. I'm standing next to her. I'm in my jeans and a t-shirt. That's what I was wearing that day. She's looking around. She hasn't seen me yet. She's looking around and she's describing, oh, there's a window there, it's round, and there's a square window there, and there's a painting on the wall here, and there's a table here with flowers. And she looks down, there's these big wide stairs. Then she turns and she reacts with shock.
I can edit that out. One moment. Apologized.
Oh, your throat chakra got all closed up then. Oh,
Florida.
no, energy.
Okay.
This moment. It's something to do with you too in Victorian times.
Okay.
Because your throat chakra just absolutely blocked up at that point and you were choking because you also can relate to being a Victorian person and that's how you died. You were choked.
I'm apparently not finished.
No.
You're killing me, Jayc.
Yeah, don't edit this out. Leave this in because this is also truth. And this is one of the things that happens when people interact with me is their truth comes out. This is also why you're doing these podcasts because you want your voice to be heard because your voice was taken from you. You weren't able to express yourself in that time frame, and it was in the probably around the 1882 that sort of time frame.
I have some more contemporary resonance with that statement of having my voice taken away. And I can absolutely agree with you that it has a lot to do with why I'm doing this.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank you
yeah.
for that.
So anyway, here we are. She turns, she looks, she gets a shock because she sees me. Now, as she reacted with that shock, she tripped and she fell down the stairs. And that's how she died. And I ran down after her and I held her head and I'm looking at her and she's looking up at me with this look of, what the far out? I can be G rated.
Just so you know, it's been well established on this podcast that you can be PG rated too if you need to be. So the occasional salty word is not going to throw me.
Oh, good. Yeah. So what the, and she died. Now, at that point, then the tutor started bringing her back to this life. Now, I open my eyes and I'm watching him bring her out of her trance state. And as she opens her eyes, she looks over me and she's got this quizzical look and she just mouths the word, how? I gave her a ride home that night. We hopped in the car. And the first thing she said, and I'm glad we've had the approval. She said, "How the fuck did you do that?" Well, I said to her, "You didn't talk about the other flowers over this side, and you didn't talk about that table with the book on it." Needless to say, the rest of our conversation on the ride home back to her place was very interesting. She wanted to know, how could I jump into somebody else's life? And this was a skill that I suddenly realized that I could go forward in people's lives and I could go back into their lives. I could see future events and I could see past events.
Was that the first time you had that experience in that moment? Were you as surprised as she?
No, I already knew I could go forward and backwards, but that was the first confirmation
Right.
of the actual situation. And that's what I'm trying to share with you
Yeah.
today is that I had evidence given to me in that moment that what I was doing was real.
Hmm.
It wasn't just based on faith or belief or ideas or imagination. And I was getting accurate results. And so I started learning how to go forward with people. I started seeing different clients. I actually started counseling people and doing readings for people. And as I did them, I could, oh, I could see every time I was always right. And that made it even harder because the ego jumps in, the skeptics jump in, and first of all, oh, you're God, you're always right. I'm Mr. Right. No, a little bit more humble, please. A little bit more real.
Hmm.
So not only was it the ego jumping in, it was the realization that you could actually say something to somebody and it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's a responsibility.
Yeah, and was it my responsibility to say the good and the bad? And I tried that trick for a while. I would only tell the good. And then I realized that people were actually getting hurt more because I wasn't telling the bad either. I was brought up to be a people pleaser. My mum, bless her, she brought me up with the value that don't make a girl cry. Sorry, mum, that's one value that I've broken 1,000 times or more now. Because when people come to me, it's one of the first thing that happens. I make them cry because they get that release of they get that truth release because they know what I'm saying is truth, is not just my truth, it's their truth.
Does it
And
feel like a mission? Does it feel like the gift exists because you're supposed to be sharing this information?
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, it's become my life mission and purpose. I mean, my purpose is the same as everybody to love and be loved, but my mission is how I deliver that. And I've had guys that are much taller and bigger than me sobbing in my arms. And they've gone from being massively aggressive because they don't believe in what I'm doing and they want to challenge me. And I just share with them some truth. And the next minute I'm getting the you're my best friend, let's go fishing, let's have barbecues, let's be friends.
What do you think the people that you're sharing this information with about the good and the bad, the present and the past, the future, what do you think they're meant to do with this information once they have
Uh,
it?
the fun thing is that's none of my business because we have choices and the choices that you have are for you and it's your responsibility, not mine. I can share the information, and if I'm guided to share information, I share it no matter what. I don't filter, I don't restrict, I don't stop.
Do you think that sharing this information about future events could um, offer an opportunity to change it, or do you feel that it's set as you perceive it when you're sharing it?
We have choices, and I only ever give people choices. I don't say you have to do this. I say I can see you have two choices. You have path A and path B. I know what I want you to do, but it is your choice.
So if you tell someone, as you did with your friend, someone's when you did the tarot reading, someone's going to die, is
Yeah.
that
Well,
set?
that was set. That was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That had to happen. And I know things that are going to happen even more, which leads me into my next story about how I ended up on TV in Ukraine.
Yes, I'd love to get into that story, shall we?
In December 2011, I was in a very happy relationship. I was having a wonderful life choices. I was doing readings. I was doing healings. I was doing energy work. I was selling crystals, having a happy life. And I was meditating one morning and I heard, get rid of everything. You're leaving Australia in July 2012. Where am I going? Not telling. What about my relationship? We'll end it probably around March. But I'm going to LA in February. Yes, we know. So are you going to tell me where I'm going? Nope.
They can be kind of cheeky sometimes, eh?
I have to believe in this now, don't I? Yes, you do. So here I am. Christmas goes by. I then go to Los Angeles to the Conscious Life Expo. I actually did a speech at the Conscious Life Expo about how to find your soulmate. We had 100 people in the room, packed out. The fire marshals closed the door because we had people in the aisles sitting on the floor. I had queues of people wanting readings with me the next day. I did back-to-back readings for 12 hours with about
Oh,
a
gosh.
10-minute break for food. It was just insanity. While I was in LA, I did an audition. Now, that audition video is actually available on YouTube. So if you look me up on YouTube, you can actually find the Roanoke audition. And it was for an LA producer. Well, that paranormal show didn't happen, but I had the audition video from it. Well, the girl that I'd been dating, yep, we broke up. I get an email from her. Now, she was also a psychic, and she was registered with the Australian Psychic Association. I wasn't, because I didn't like the judgment and I didn't like the values of the organization.
Well, hang on now, Jayc. I need to stop you here. Because earlier, when I asked you in your younger days if the concept of psychics or any sort of paranormal or anything that fit into the parapsychology realm was accepted, and you said it was not. And here you've just mentioned an Australian Psychic Association. So in that, somewhere in the middle there, this became something
Yeah.
that was more accepted, and there was a community that you could tap into. Yeah.
Yes. And that was why when I was in Australia, living in Australia for many years, I found that community, but I didn't like the hierarchy and the ego of the community.
Understood.
So I wasn't registered with them. Well, my ex-girlfriend had got an email from a Ukrainian TV channel, STB, who were doing a television show called Bitva Extrasensitive, which translates to Battle of the Psychics. Now, it's a franchise show and it's in multiple countries all over the world.
Except the US, because I've never heard of it here.
There is a version of it in the US.
Is there?
Yes, the franchise actually is in the US, but it's got a different name and I can't remember what they called it.
I'd love to
But
know.
it was in the US.
Uh-huh.
Now, what they did was she said to me, I can't go for the audition. Would you like to send your details? Because they were going through all the psychics in the association list, inviting them to audition for the show. They actually sent out 70,000 audition requests. They then narrowed them down to 150 people. Cut a very long story short, I was chosen. And in April 2012, they said to me, you're coming to Ukraine in July 2012.
Oh, gosh.
You know that I'd said earlier, my meditation said that I was leaving Australia in July 2012 and I had to get rid of everything. Well, now I knew where I was going. So that was it. I'm getting rid of everything. Cars gone, furniture's gone, everything. I had 60 kilos of luggage left. But unfortunately, 2 weeks after they announced that I was coming, they rang me and said X Factor had gone over budget. They couldn't afford to fly me from Australia to Ukraine. So they would have me come the following year. Now, my meditation, every time I'd meditate, I would hear, no, get rid of everything, you're leaving. What the hell? I've got to trust. So I got rid of everything. At the end of June, on the Monday, I meditate because I was meditating every day. I asked in my meditation, what am I going to do now? I've got no job. I've got no income. I've got no car. I've got no furniture. What do I do? And I had moved from Brisbane to Sydney. Okay, so I rang a friend of mine and said, hey, have you got a bed? And she went, yes, come this Friday. Okay. 2 nights later, it's Wednesday, the night of the full moon. It was 6:40 p.m. as my phone rang. Hello, Jayc, Yugoslav from STB. Jayc, can you be in Ukraine this Saturday? No. What do you mean? Well, I'm 1,300 kilometers from the consulate. I can't get there in time to get a visa. It's 30 hours of flying. I don't have enough time. He went, okay, I'll call you back. I'm now walking along the beach, saying a certain four-letter word over and over and over and over, wondering, have I just messed up the greatest opportunity of my life? And looking at my phone, waiting for it to ring. 45 minutes go by. It rings. Jayc, the producers have just had a look at your audition. You've now been passed in the first two tasks. You're now in the top 20.
Okay.
Okay, out of the 150 that are arriving this Saturday, you're already in the top 20. We're going to fly you out on Wednesday next week. You'll spend a week in Kiev, Ukraine. You'll arrive Thursday morning and you'll start filming on Friday. And so go to the consulate, get your visa, keep the receipt, we'll pay for everything. And I was, okay.
I have to wonder why your guides didn't want to give you any more information. Why is there so much mystery?
Because I like to live a relatively normal life. Because I know so much more. And if I know too much, then it makes it very hard to actually have relationships, to communicate, to live a typical life, to exist in this world. Now I got to Ukraine, I did my audition, and then on the Monday, I get a phone call from the producers. Jayc, you're in the top 11. You've got a choice. Do you want to go back to Australia this week? Because we start filming on Saturday. No, I said, no, I'll stay. And they went, great. And so then they looked after me that week. I did other filming in Kiev that week in preparation. And I started shocking the producers. I knew nothing about Kiev, about its history, about any of the locations that they took me to. But here I was telling them things from their history that I shouldn't have known. I didn't speak Ukrainian or Russian languages, but I'm giving them information about people from hundreds of years ago. And then they would look at them up in their history books and they would go, he's right.
Now, I know that your whole story is told in a book that I happen to have a copy of. Right here, because you were nice enough to provide the PDF copy for me, and it's called Jayc Ryder, a real psychic medium on reality TV. And at the end of the episode, we're going to make sure everybody who's interested in the entire story can read that, because my podcast is only an hour long, Jayc.
Yes,
I want to tantalize my listeners with skipping to the final episode, if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
And because I know there's a very compelling story. After you've come through this competition, you're placing very highly in this competition. You're blasting other psychics out of the water, so to speak. And here we are in the final episode, which was a particularly challenging task. So would you take us through that experience, please?
Okay, well, just remember, this is a TV show run by skeptics. And so they gave us situations that would always challenge us mind, body, and soul level. This was filmed in December. The snow is already 1 meter deep. We were filming from 6 p.m. at night till 6 a.m. the following morning. We're sitting in a trailer it's a makeup trailer. It's got heating. We're outside a warehouse. Inside the warehouse, they created 4, we might as well call them prison cells. And in each cell was a particular story for each of the 4 finalists. Now, I arrived at 6 o'clock. We do makeup. We have something to eat. We're not told what we're doing. We're not even allowed in the warehouse. We had no idea what was happening. Because it's our last finale, there was some wine there. So we're having a glass of wine and celebrating that we'd gotten this far. Yes, we were competing against each other, but it was the finale. You know, this is as far as we go. Well, the producers would take us one by one out of the shed or the trailer we were in We'd sit in a car with the engine running, and they'd ask us, what did we feel? What was our task? What then happened was I said to them, okay, I can see what looks like a big gray control panel. It's like a big electricity or a ship control panel. And lots of dials, switches, buttons, it's a control room of some sort. It's an industrial control room, and there's lots of people. And my producers had gotten used to me giving them insights into what my task was. And they were very confused because my task was about Chernobyl, the nuclear accident, and the control room, in particular, the control room operator. How can I see that? How can I know this is the story? Then in the task, I had 4 things I had to find plus some numbers. The numbers were the date of Chernobyl. I had the control room operator's glasses. I had a floppy disk from the computer. I had his camera and a book. Now, these are historical artifacts supplied by the Chernobyl Museum director, who was watching me doing this because she was very nervous about the tasks. You know, this is their historical, very deep, special stuff.
Yeah.
I'm in this room that looks like it's a jail cell, but it looks like an office that's been destroyed. The props department did a great job of making my jail cell look the part. And I have to find the objects and explain what I see. And I put on his glasses and I could see what happened at the time of the first eruption. I explained a few points about what he was doing at that time. And because I had an earpiece in for my translator, so I could get instructions from my translator if necessary, the director, and I heard, Jayc, stop. You can't share that information. That's classified.
Oh gosh.
Go back to this point and do something else. So I went back to that point and I changed the story ever so slightly for television. Now, after I gotten free of my cell, the guy next to me, he wasn't free of his.
You had to complete the task in order to be free.
He didn't get the numbers to get out. So we had a countdown timer. And after 30 minutes, there was an explosion. The cells exploded.
You mean an actual explosion?
Real explosions, yes.
How did that pass the safety officials?
There is no such thing as safety officials in Ukraine.
Apparently not. My goodness.
No, all the rules, the filming rules that you have in America, forget them. We don't have those rules.
So you have 30 minutes to accomplish your task or they blow you up.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I heard that correctly.
Yeah. And so then we ran from the explosion, and that video is on YouTube as well. You can see us running from the explosion. And as we get outside, of course, it's about 5 a.m. in the morning now. It's been snowing and it's slippery. I slipped on the ice. I tore my right thigh muscle in 3 places.
Oh, gosh.
But the funny part was 2 nights later on the Saturday, I'm sitting in my hotel room. My leg has blown up. So I call my administrator, Mama Jane. We would call her Mama Jane.
Every set need one.
She arranged for an ambulance to come. So I have this ambulance arrive at my hotel and he examines me and he says, right, we can do 2 things. We can take you to a public hospital or you can go to a private hospital in the morning with the studio. And I said, okay, I'll do the private with the studio. The ambulance officers leave. About 4 minutes later, there's a knock on the door. It's the male ambulance officer again. He says, I just told my wife, who's a big fan of the show, that I just examined you. And can we get your autograph, please? I'm sitting there in my underwear. This is a man who's been examining my leg.
It's very intimate.
And it's sort of, yeah, sure. What's Sergey? Yeah, okay, Sergey thing. And your wife's name Anna. Okay, Anna, you're very lucky to
Don't
have such
don't tell
wonderful name.
Anna that you are in your underwear. Just leave that part out.
And it was sort of, okay, this is what being a celebrity is like on TV. You're having to sign autographs in your underwear.
So, were you able to complete the competition with your leg in that condition?
Well, yeah, I ended up having a brace put on my leg. Well, we weren't competing anymore now. We were doing filming for the story because there was a 30-minute segment in the final episode just on me. You know, it was it was a time and place for me to prove how real my world was. I then went on to host 16 episodes of another TV show about investigations. And we solved murders and criminal situations and put people in jail.
This was also in Ukraine.
In Ukraine as well, yes.
So by then you're recognizable on the street,
Oh,
I would imagine.
I was followed on the street. I was recognized on the subway.
How did that feel to you?
It was easy to hide with a scarf around your face because
Yeah,
it's so cold. But
right.
then when you
Mhm.
move the scarf,
Mhm.
I got recognized
Mhm.
constantly. And
Mhm.
then people would ask me questions about their life and their children and their parents and
Yeah,
their
that's kind of
loved ones.
irresistible. Sure, everybody wants to
Everyone
hear
would ask.
something. Yeah.
It was fun, but it became very tiring too
Mhm.
because I couldn't be anonymous
Sometimes
anymore.
you just need to go get a loaf of bread unmolested.
I remember standing at my supermarket and the woman in front of me, she recognized me, but she was too afraid to ask. And I kind of wish to this day that she had.
What did you see?
Just, she needed me.
Hmm.
Her heart needed me.
It's possible she got what she needed without even knowing it.
No,
You don't
she
think?
didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I know she didn't.
Oh,
And that's the hardest part about being me is the ones that I know that I touch their lives, that's great. And the ones that miss out, that's sad
mm-hmm.
because they're suffering still and they don't need to.
Tell me, if you will, one of the most, I have to pick only one, memorable moments from the second television show, the investigative show that you did.
We were doing a story in a village where all the children went missing. And we discovered an extra story of a young girl. She was 14. Um, she was gang raped by 6 guys, stabbed 17 times, and thrown in a well.
Goodness.
And she drowned. That was actually her cause of death was drowning.
Oh, it's awful.
I saw her father there. He was there watching us filming. He wanted us to help him. And so I gave him a whole lot of information about what happened. And we'd been filming that day from 7 a.m. till 11 p.m. at night. I was exhausted. I remember walking with my translator back to the bus. We had these Mercedes vans that were very comfortable buses for us to use. And I remember walking back exhausted, and he came running up to me. Now, this guy, he was huge, big, strong Ukrainian man. And he looked at me and he said, with tears in his eyes, "Thank you. You have finally brought peace to my heart and the
Oh,
heart of
gosh.
my wife from what
Wow.
you have said to us today."
Oh, gosh.
And he hugged me at that point, put his arms around me, and I hugged him tight too. And he sobbed on my shoulder. And as he walked away, he was speaking Russian language. He was going, "Спасибо, спасибо большое."
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so very much. And moments like that make it all worthwhile.
Mm-hmm. That's when it feels like there's a real reason to have a gift like this. Much
Yeah.
better than, I mean, the reality TV is fine, but it's a game at the end of the day, even though what's happening is real. But something like that one-on-one organic moment, really, that's the answer to why why can some people see these things and perceive these things? What purpose can it serve? And you've just given a beautiful example
And
of
that's
that.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Bringing peace to someone's heart. That's why I do it. And sometimes to bring peace, you've got to say the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Do you spontaneously approach people in public and offer information?
I tried that in the beginning, back in my early 20s when I was coming to terms with everything. Now, usually people come to me.
Hi, Jayc. Tell me about me.
I
Please
was
tell me
waiting.
something about myself that I don't know.
I don't actually do that. That's not my speciality. See, my speciality is taking people into their heart, clearing that blockage that you have in your throat, because that's also tied into your heart, very big time.
So you're telling me it's not just Florida.
It's not just Florida, no,
Okay.
it's your heart. And even your body language now, if anyone's watching the video, they'll see that your body language is you've just tensed up. That's how subtle our body reacts to it.
Are you working your mojo on me right now, Jayc?
Oh, I've been doing that all day.
I'm trying with every fiber of my being not to say, really, tell me more about that, because it's not supposed to be about me. But, if there's anything you want to offer, I'd love to hear it.
The thing is, I put people into their heart, and sometimes you have to break down the door to get in. I'm not afraid of breaking down the door, but I also understand there's a time and a place. And some doors are not to be opened in public, some are in private.
For sure.
And I always respect the situation. I had one gentleman, he did not believe. I was at an event in Kiev and he goes, I don't believe in any of that stuff. It's all rubbish. And I went, fantastic. And he looked at me, he was, huh? I mean, don't worry, I'm not going to try and make you believe. It's not my job to make you believe. You don't have to believe in anything that I say. In fact, if you don't, I agree with you 100%. Don't believe what I say. Have your beliefs, live them, be them, enjoy them, and you'll have nothing but my respect. He was looking for a fight.
It's fascinating to me, the subjectivity of something like belief. A belief is something that we choose. We choose to perceive it as truth. And there's a big difference between what we believe and what is the objective truth. And I'm thinking about doing an entire series on that alone. How can we know what is true? Can that be, beyond a shadow of a doubt, ever settled? Or is it really just a matter of what are the series of beliefs that each of us individually choose to make a part of who we are? And how does that inform how we interact with each other, how we move through the world? One of the things I wanted to accomplish with this series, because my audience is not necessarily already predisposed to belief in the paranormal, is to simply inspire them to spend a little bit more time thinking more deeply than perhaps they have in the past about this. A lot of us will form beliefs based on 5 minutes of scrolling social media, reading the first paragraph of an article, listening to the first 10 minutes of this podcast, and then deciding this is a bunch of hooey and, dropping it. But for me, it isn't even about what we settle on. This is what I believe, or this is what I don't believe. It's not about what is truth and what isn't. It's about the journey of discovery. It's about the exploration. It's about letting all of the details in and letting them percolate, and actually using the intellect and the emotion and the heart, as you say, in order to just sit with it. We don't necessarily have to arrive at a destination. The destination ultimately is our own death, for now, for this life. But in the meantime, it's the journey that really counts, in my view.
I have a question for you.
Do.
How's your heart feeling? Because you've just said the most important thing of all.
Yes. What did I say?
Did you hear it? And are you living it?
Mm-hmm. Am I living it? So when you ask me, how is my heart, you're not talking about my physical heart. Is it beating properly? You're asking about the condition of my heart.
Yeah, I'm asking about the energetic feeling that you have in your heart right now, in your throat. because our throat gets blocked to protect our heart.
Mhm.
Same as our solar plexus. That's why we all have bellies. We're using our solar plexus to protect our heart, or our throat to protect our heart. This is why women also get breast cancer, because they're trying to protect their hearts. It's emotional overload.
I'll share this with you in response to your question, Jayc. I may have said in our introductory chat that we had when we first met, I may or may not have shared with you that I started the podcast, I thought for one reason, but then it was shared with me by a therapist that I actually was starting it for an entirely different reason. And it was a trauma response.
Yes, I remember you saying about trauma response.
Yeah. So this exercise for me is a way of processing personal trauma that I've been through. And it's a way for me to also process all of the information that I take in on a regular basis, the things I read, the things I study, the things that I have questions about. I said to you just before we started, just before we pressed record today, that I've read some books about people who've had extraordinary experiences. And my response to that book is that I want to reach out to the person that whose story is being told, and I want to talk to them and I want to look them in the eye. And having a podcast affords me an opportunity to have those conversations. So it is good for my heart. But when you say in this moment, well, you're working your mojo on me.
Oh,
I'm like,
I'm giggling at your response.
I'm saying in my heart, there's one thing that if you actually say it, it's gonna freak me right the hell out.
Oh,
so,
goody.
so the condition of my heart is keep your mouth shut and wait and see if he says it. But I feel good about the conversation because it's giving me an opportunity to have fun with something that I have a very keen interest about. I really want to know how much of this kind of ability is real, how much of it is inflated. And I'm not saying you specifically, I mean anybody who claims to have this ability. How much of this can we take and run with? Because my experience has been mostly with stage performers, which you have been in the past. So you learn how to cold read and you know how to do all of these things. But there's a genuineness about you that I find compelling. It's why I wanted to have a conversation with you. And I wanted to ask you about whether you think this is an ability that we all have and we all could cultivate. That's what my heart wants to know right now. Could I do this if I wanted
You
to?
already know the answer to that.
I do, but I
That's
want
why
you to
you're on
tell
this
me.
journey. I don't need to tell you. You already know the answer to that. Yeah, everybody has this. We all have that connection. We all have that ability. We all have that insight, that intuition,
Mhm,
that sixth sense, whatever you want to brand it, we
mhm.
all have it. And it's like anything, you can cultivate it or you can compress it. You can destroy it or you can become as crazy as I am and just live it.
And that's my personal hashtag life goal is to become as crazy as Jayc Ryder. That's it. That's why I'm
I
living.
can just see that trending on Twitter now. Hashtag be as crazy as me.
Did I answer your question about my heart, or is there something, a stone we haven't turned over there yet?
What you've actually done is you've given me the most beautiful defense mechanism
Oh, what have I done? How did I do that?
by talking from your head at 400 miles an hour.
I specialize in that.
And that is a typical defense mechanism when I touch a button.
What if I don't know what that button is?
Ah, you actually do know the button, but to actually acknowledge it within yourself is the learning.
Okay.
And that's where a lot of the time we don't listen to ourselves. We speak, we say all sorts of stuff. And if you listen to this recording, especially this part, listen to how fast you were speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, your brain just went, quick, emergency!
Is that what happened? Really?
That's what happens. And that is that trauma response. That's that fight or flight mechanism. And you'll notice that I'm actually not responding to that.
I did notice that.
Yes, because there's a time and a place to respond to those emotional situations. This is
Mm-hmm.
why I'm very lucky because I've had psychology counseling training. I know when to push and when not to. And that's why sometimes I give some answers and other times I don't. I know how far to go. Because right this minute, this is a recording for a podcast. It is not a therapy session.
Right.
And that's a completely different conversation at a completely different level. And I can
in some ways,
guarantee you
it is. I don't want to cry today, not on the podcast.
But that's the thing, because what that does is that helps the emotional release. And
Yes.
But everything that I do with respect. And I made a decision a long time ago. I will only say things that I do not know. That is impossible for me to know. I want accuracy. I want 100% accuracy. If I don't know, then I'm not going to give something just to satisfy somebody's desire. Oh, can you tell me something? I would rather have that than make stuff up. That's not who I am. That's manipulation. That goes back to the stage hypnosis. That's manipulation.
Right.
I'm not in that game. I'm dealing with people's hearts and minds and their bodies and souls. I want them to love and respect me. I've got clients that I've had for over 20 years. Oh, people that absolutely have loved me all this time because I changed their life. And I dealt with them in the most difficult situation of all. I've had clients whose partners have been murdered, and I helped them get closure and discover who the murderer was.
That's huge.
I've found people who were missing. I've helped other families get peace when their children were killed through accidents. And I gave evidence. And I only want to work in a state where there is evidence.
These examples you're giving, are you speaking about the television show, or are you speaking about a private practice?
Combination, television and private practice.
And that's something you're still involved in today, working with people on that level?
I will still work with people on application only. Because what I do is I'm not just here to, tell me your fortune. Tell me my fortune. Am I going to be rich? Am I going to be married? Am I going to have a baby?
You don't have a crystal ball and you don't wear a funny turban or anything like that.
No, I'm not interested in that level of showmanship.
Right. So tell me, what is day to day for you now that the television show has completed? What are you working professionally in this area, or are you off to other endeavors?
I'm doing this stuff application only, but I'm coaching people in speaking and being on television. I've also started a couple of new projects. I have a web design company as well. I've had that company for about 15 years, so it just ticks over in the background. And it's really cool because I get to meet amazing people, have some fun. But I've also just been signed up for a speakers agency in the UK, where I'm going to be doing keynote speeches all around the UK.
About this or about other things?
My project that I have is all about storytelling and how to tell a story and how to be comfortable on camera and actually tell stories and get your message out there.
And do you do that work locally, or are you doing that globally via?
Globally online. And I'm also going to be running events as well. So I've got a stage show coming up that I'm putting together. So I'm a busy chap.
We said that right up front, that you had many irons in the fire.
Yeah, and I do that because I don't want to just do one thing.
I can understand that.
That's not my thing. I have so many opportunities in life, and I have so many people's lives to touch.
What would you like me to tell my listeners about how they can get their own copy of your full story?
Sure.
This is the full story of both television shows.
This is my diary, and this is what I could publicly report. There are some things in there that I haven't been able to say, but if people want to know a little bit more, they can always contact me about those stories if they want to know some specifics. But for copyright and legal reasons, some things I couldn't go into too much details. There's some pretty harsh stories in there.
Yeah. So for anybody who'd like to read more about this, they can visit your website, which will be in the show notes. It's jaycryder.com. And in order to make sure you're spelling Jayc correctly, please check the show notes because it's, one of those funny New Zealand spellings.
Jayc.
Jaycryder.com. And also you're saying this book is available on Amazon in the US?
Yes, it is. If you want a hard copy, it's available on Amazon. It's only about $5, I think.
It's called
And
Jayc
if anyone
Ryder.
buys the hard copy,
yes,
message me with a photo of the hard copy, and I'll do a one-on-one 30-minute session with you.
That's a very generous offer.
Oh, look, it's about meeting people and communicating, and I'm not expecting 10,000 copies to be sold. I love to connect to people because that's what I'm here for.
Mm-hmm. It's a very generous spirit that you have. It's a great thing to do with a gift like this. So that offer and all of the links are going to be made available. So it'll be easy to follow for anybody who wants to know more. What else can we leave people with? What is the last thing that you would want to have someone carrying in their heart when they reach the end of this podcast, Jayc?
I love you.
That's what I was hoping you'd say.
Remember that.
I know that has a lot to do with your current mission. So yes. There is no better message.
No.
I just want to thank Jayc Ryder for a wonderful conversation. I really, really enjoyed this one. He rolled with all my punches and I did my best to roll with all of his. Please check the show notes for all the links to the things that he talked about, including the very generous offer that he made to do a free psychic reading for anybody that photographs themselves and sends that to him along with his hardcover edition of his book. That's pretty cool. I almost want to do it myself, but I'm scared. And if you want to know a little bit more about what I thought about Jayc, the conversation, and all of the things we talked about, kind of my brain dump on the whole thing. I know I've said it's about the journey and not the conclusions, and it's not about what I believe or you believe. But if you're interested in a couple of my thoughts on that, you can just pop over to my website, check the blog. There is a blog entry with kind of like my diary about every one of these interview experiences. So you're welcome to pop over there. My parting thought for today, well, it's a poem. I seem to be doing those a lot lately. This one is by Topher Kirby. It doesn't have a title, but I thought that it fit well with the conversation that Jayc and I ended on. So here it is. So many who've been through so much are often the most beautiful people you'll ever meet. They love people as they are, where they are, because that's how they wish love had been shown to them during the difficult days. They carry a powerful courage that can only be earned living through impossible moments and coming out healed on the other side. They are genuinely kind, powerfully honest, and authentically good. Because when you rise from the ashes, all that remains is love. Until next episode, I would like to say thanks for listening. Come on back, and I will see you next time. Cool Gray in Studio A is a fine-tuned services production. It exists for entertainment purposes and is not intended to be used as a sole source of information or advice on any subject. Find and follow this podcast at coolgraystudios.com.